The Kaldrith's sovereign fleet floated in the vast darkness of space like sleeping giants. Hundreds of massive warships held their formation perfectly, their metal hulls reflecting distant starlight. Commander Thalen stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion, watching the tactical screens with all four of his eyes. His species had ruled this sector of the galaxy for 3,000 years, and nothing entered their territory without permission. "Commander, we have an unidentified vessel," the scanning officer reported. Her voice was steady, professional. "It entered our space 17 minutes ago. The ship is not responding to any of our hailing frequencies." Thalen moved closer to the main display screen. The unknown ship was small compared to his fleet, roughly the size of a cargo transport. But its design was strange. The hull didn't match any known species in the galactic database. Smooth curves mixed with sharp angles in ways that seemed almost aggressive. "Send standard warning protocol," Thalen ordered. "All languages. Make it clear they are in restricted space." The communications officer worked quickly, broadcasting warnings in 47 different galactic languages. Minutes passed. The strange ship continued on its course, completely ignoring the fleet. It showed no signs of slowing down or changing direction. "Still no response, Commander," the communications officer said. Thalen's mandibles clicked together, a sign of irritation in his species. "Fire warning shots. 2 degrees off their bow. Make them understand we are serious." The weapons officer pressed several controls. 2 of the fleet's destroyers rotated slightly, their massive cannons lining up. Bright blue plasma bolts shot across the darkness, passing close enough to the unknown ship that any pilot would feel threatened. The bolts dissipated harmlessly into space. The strange vessel didn't even adjust its shields. It simply continued forward. "Commander, they're not responding to the warning shots either," the tactical officer said, confusion clear in his voice. "They're maintaining speed and course." Thalen felt his 3 hearts beat faster. In his entire career, no one had ever ignored a Kaldrith warning shot. Pirates fled. Merchants immediately stopped and complied. Even military vessels from rival empires at least acknowledged the warning. This ship acted as if the most powerful fleet in the sector didn't exist. "Perhaps their communications are damaged," suggested First Officer Kelmar, standing beside Thalen. "They might not be receiving our signals." "Then they would have responded to the warning shots with evasive maneuvers," Thalen replied. "No, they're ignoring us deliberately. That's an act of war." He turned to face his weapons officer fully. "Target the vessel. Full broadside assault. I want that ship disabled and boarded within the next 10 minutes. Perhaps when they're floating dead in space, they'll be more willing to communicate." "Yes, Commander." Across the fleet, 20 warships moved into attack formation. Their weapon systems powered up, creating an energy signature so massive that it could be detected from 3 star systems away. Plasma cannons, kinetic railguns, and particle beam weapons all locked onto the small, strange vessel. "Fire," Thalen commanded. The void erupted with light and fury. Streams of superheated plasma, solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds, and focused energy beams all converged on the unknown ship. The attack was overwhelming, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Any normal vessel would have been vaporized instantly. But when the light faded and the sensors cleared, the strange ship was still there. Its shields glowed bright blue for a moment, then faded back to normal. The vessel hadn't even slowed down. "What?" Thalen whispered. "That's impossible. Run diagnostics on all weapons systems immediately." "Weapons systems are functioning perfectly, Commander," the weapons officer reported, his voice shaking. "All shots hit their target. But their shields, they absorbed everything. The energy readings don't make sense." The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at their screens in disbelief. The Kaldrith Empire had the most advanced military technology in the known galaxy. Their weapons could punch through any shield system ever developed. Yet this small, unknown ship had taken a full fleet assault and barely registered the impact. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," the communications officer suddenly announced. Her hands trembled over her controls. "It's cutting through all our frequencies. Overriding all our security protocols." "Put it on speakers," Thalen ordered. Static filled the bridge for a moment. Then through the noise, a single word emerged. It was spoken in a language none of them had ever heard, but somehow the universal translators caught it. The word echoed across every speaker on every ship in the entire fleet. "Earth." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Thalen felt his blood turn to ice in his veins. Around the bridge, officers looked at each other with wide eyes. Some of the younger crew members looked confused, but the older ones, those who had studied ancient galactic history, they understood. "Recall all attack wings immediately," Thalen said quietly. His voice barely worked. "Power down all weapons. And someone contact Admiral Hayes. Right now." Admiral Victoria Hayes materialized on the bridge in a shimmer of blue light. The quantum projection made her appear almost ghost-like, but her presence commanded immediate attention. She was old even by Caldrith standards. Her scales had faded to a pale gray and deep lines marked her face. She had served the Galactic Council for over 300 years, longer than anyone currently living. Commander Thalen stood at attention. "Admiral," the unidentified vessel transmitted a single word. "I thought you should know immediately." Victoria's face, which had been stern and authoritative moments before, changed completely. The color drained from her scales. Her 4 eyes widened with something Thalen had never seen in his superior officer before. Fear. Pure, absolute fear. "Pull back the entire fleet," she commanded. "Full retreat. Now." "Admiral?" Thalen couldn't hide his shock. "With respect, it's just one ship. We have hundreds of—" "I said now, Commander." Victoria's voice cracked like thunder. "Move every vessel back to maximum safe distance. Do not fire another shot. Do not make any aggressive moves. If that ship even thinks we're threatening it, we could start a war that ends our entire civilization." The bridge crew moved frantically, following orders despite their confusion. Thalen had served under Admiral Hayes for 40 years. He had never heard panic in her voice before. "Admiral, please explain," Thalen said quietly. "That word Earth. Most of our officers have never heard it. I only recognize it from restricted archive files I accessed decades ago during my command training." Victoria took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Clear the bridge. All personnel except senior officers. This information is classified at the highest level." Within minutes, only 5 officers remained. Victoria looked at each of them, her ancient eyes heavy with knowledge they were about to receive. 10,000 years ago, she began slowly, the galaxy was very different. The elder races, species that evolved millions of years before us, they controlled everything. They explored every sector, cataloged every world, contacted every intelligent species they found. She paused, her hands trembling slightly. Then they found a small blue planet in a distant arm of the galaxy. A world covered mostly in water. The species there called it Earth, and they called themselves humans. Thalen leaned forward. "I've never heard of humans in any current galactic database." "Because they were erased," Victoria said. "Removed from all public records. The elder races made that decision unanimously, something that had never happened before or since. You have to understand, the elder races had seen thousands of developing civilizations. They had protocols for everything. But humans were different." "Different how?" asked First Officer Kelmar. Victoria activated a holographic display. Ancient images appeared, grainy and distorted by age. They showed creatures that walked on 2 legs, with smooth skin and strange, expressive faces. The images shifted, showing cities, primitive weapons, and then scenes of warfare. "Humans were not the strongest species," Victoria continued. "They were not the fastest, not the smartest, not the most advanced. But they had something the elder races had never encountered before. An absolute refusal to give up. An ability to adapt to anything. And a capacity for warfare that terrified everyone who studied them." The holographic images changed, showing battles. Humans fighting with sticks and stones. Then metal swords. Then primitive guns. Then massive explosions that consumed entire cities. "For their entire history humans fought," Victoria said. "They fought over resources, over beliefs, over territory, over ideas. They fought each other constantly. Thousands of wars. Millions of battles. They developed strategy, tactics, and weapons at a pace that shouldn't have been possible. Every time they invented something new, they immediately thought about how to use it in war." Thalen watched the images with growing unease. The humans in the recordings were brutal, creative, and relentless. "The elder races studied them for centuries," Victoria went on. "They watched humans survive ice ages, plagues, famines, and disasters that would have ended other species. Every time something should have destroyed them, they adapted. They changed. They overcame. And they never stopped fighting." "So the elder races decided to make contact?" Kelmar asked. "No," Victoria said firmly. "They decided to quarantine the entire planet. They put up detection barriers, early warning systems, and orbital defense platforms. Then they sealed all the records and made Earth forbidden. The elder races were afraid, you see. afraid of what humans would become if they ever reached the stars. But why? Thalen demanded. If they were primitive. They weren't primitive, Victoria interrupted. They were young. There's a difference. The elder races ran projections. Every single simulation showed the same result. If humans ever developed space travel, if they ever joined the galactic community, they would change everything. Their mindset, their refusal to accept limits, their endless drive to improve and compete, it would reshape the entire galaxy. She looked directly at Thalen. The quarantine was supposed to last until either humans destroyed themselves in their constant wars, or they evolved beyond their violent nature. It's been 10,000 years, Commander. That ship out there means the quarantine failed. And humans didn't destroy themselves. The bridge of the Dominion remained silent for nearly an hour. Commander Thalen and his officers watched the human ship on their displays, afraid to move, afraid to do anything that might provoke another response. The vessel simply floated in space, waiting. Admiral Hayes, Thalen finally said, should we attempt communication again? Victoria nodded slowly. Yes, but let me do the talking. Use the diplomatic channel, maximum respect protocols. And Commander, whatever happens, remember that we fired first. The communications officer opened a channel. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the main screen flickered to life. A human appeared on the display. He sat in a chair that looked surprisingly simple compared to Caldrith command thrones. The human was male, with short dark hair that was graying at the sides. His skin was pale and his eyes were a striking blue color. He wore a dark uniform with symbols and insignia that meant nothing to the Caldrith officers. But his expression was calm, professional, and completely unafraid. I am Captain James Hartley of the United Nations Space Command Vessel Defender, the human said. His voice was steady and clear. You fired on my ship without provocation. I'm waiting for an explanation. Admiral Hayes stepped forward in her projection form. Captain Hartley, I am Admiral Victoria Hayes of the Galactic Council. On behalf of the Caldrith Sovereign Fleet, I apologize for the attack. It was a terrible mistake. We did not realize who you were. You knew exactly who we were, James replied, his blue eyes sharp. We transmitted our planet's name. That word clearly meant something to you, Admiral. Your fleet pulled back the moment you heard it. Victoria hesitated. Captain, how much do you know about the quarantine? Everything, James said simply. He leaned back in his chair. 3 years ago, Earth detected unusual energy signatures at the edge of our solar system. Ancient satellites, orbital platforms, detection grids, all failing. The equipment was incredibly old, breaking down after thousands of years. We sent probes to investigate. He tapped something on his command console. Images appeared on the split screen showing massive alien structures floating dead in space. We found your quarantine system, James continued. At first, we didn't understand what it was. But we're good at reverse engineering. We studied the technology, learned how it worked, and accessed the data banks. That's when we learned the truth. We've been prisoners in our own solar system for 10,000 years. Thalen felt his stomach tighten. You accessed elder race technology? That should be impossible. James looked directly at him. Commander, humans put 12 people on our moon using computers less powerful than what you probably carry in your pocket. We built machines that could think. We split atoms and harnessed the power of stars. We did all of this while trapped on one planet, fighting ourselves with no outside help. Reverse engineering old satellites? That was the easy part. Captain Hartley, Victoria said carefully, what exactly has Earth been doing for the past 3 years? Watching. Listening. Learning, James replied. Once we cracked the quarantine technology, we gained access to galactic communication networks. We've been monitoring your news broadcasts, your political discussions, your trade negotiations. We learned your languages. We studied your cultures, your military capabilities, your alliances and conflicts. He smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. We also built ships. Lots of ships. We took what we learned from the quarantine satellites and combined it with our own technology. Human engineering is different from yours, Admiral. We don't wait for perfect solutions. We build, we test, we fail, we improve, and we build again. Fast. How many ships? Thalen asked, dreading the answer. That's classified, Commander, James said. But let's just say the Defender isn't alone out here. We've been observing your fleet from multiple positions for the past 6 hours. You never detected our other vessels. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Their sensors were the best in the galaxy. The idea that human ships had been watching them without being detected was terrifying. Captain Hartley, Victoria said, what does Earth want? James leaned forward, his expression serious. Earth wants what any intelligent species wants, Admiral. Recognition. Respect. A seat at the table. We want to join the galactic community as equals, not as some dangerous species that needs to be caged. The quarantine was for your protection as much as ours, Victoria argued. The galaxy can be dangerous. There are species that would have exploited humans, enslaved your people. And you think we couldn't handle that? James interrupted, his voice sharp. Admiral, humans have been enslaving, exploiting, and fighting each other for our entire history. We know what cruelty looks like. We've perfected it, survived it, and learned from it. Whatever dangers exist out there in the galaxy, I promise you, we've already done worse to ourselves. He stood up from his chair. Here's what's going to happen. Earth demands a formal apology for the unprovoked attack on our vessel. We demand accountability. The commander who ordered the assault will face a review board. And we demand immediate negotiations for Earth's integration into the Galactic Council as a full member with voting rights. And if we refuse? Thalen asked, anger creeping into his voice despite his fear. James looked at him with those cold blue eyes. Then, Commander, you'll discover exactly why your ancestors were afraid of us. The diplomatic channel remained open for another 20 minutes. Admiral Hayes tried to negotiate to find middle ground, to buy time for the Galactic Council to convene and decide how to handle this unprecedented situation. Captain Hartley listened patiently, but his position never changed. Earth wanted recognition as equals and they wanted it now. Then everything went wrong. 3 Caldrith warships broke formation. They were commanded by General Varric, a hardline military officer who had been listening to the entire conversation. He had built his career on strength and dominance, and he refused to accept that some upstart species from a quarantined world could make demands of the Caldrith Empire. This is General Varric to all ships, his voice boomed across the fleet communication network. I will not stand by while this human insults our fleet. The Caldrith bow to no one, especially not to primitives who just learned to leave their own planet. General, stand down. Admiral Hayes commanded. That is a direct order. With respect, Admiral, you are Galactic Council. I answer to the Caldrith High Command, Varric replied. And they would never accept this humiliation. His 3 warships, each one massive and bristling with weapons, accelerated toward the defender. They moved into a triangle formation, a classic Caldrith tactic designed to surround and disable enemy vessels. On the screen, Captain Hartley's expression didn't change. He simply sighed, the kind of tired sigh that someone makes when they expected something to happen and hoped they would be wrong. Commander Emma Whitfield, James said, apparently speaking to someone off-screen. Show them. Sir, lethal force or non-lethal? A female voice responded. Non-lethal, James replied. We're here to make a point, not start a war. Yet. The defender didn't move. It didn't raise additional shields or power up visible weapons. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the human ship's hull opened in dozens of places. Small objects launched out into space, moving so fast they were almost invisible. The Caldrith sensors finally caught them, hundreds of small drones, each no bigger than a personal transport pod. Drones? General Varric laughed over the open channel. You think toys will stop Caldrith warships? Fire all weapons. His 3 ships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds filled the space between them and the defender. But the drones moved like nothing the Caldrith had ever seen. They twisted, spun, and dodged with impossible precision. The few that were hit simply exploded into small fragments that didn't affect the others. Within seconds, the drone swarm split into 3 groups. Each group descended on one of Varric's warships like a cloud of angry insects. What are they doing? Thalen whispered, watching his tactical display in amazement. The drones weren't attacking the ship's hulls or shields. Instead, they targeted specific systems with surgical precision. They cut through sensor arrays with focused laser beams. They attached to weapon ports and released electromagnetic pulses that fried targeting computers. They disabled communication antennas, shield generators, and engine control systems. They're taking the ships apart piece by piece, First Officer Kalmar said in awe. Not destroying them, just disabling them. General Varric's confident voice turned to panic. All ships, evasive maneuvers, point defense systems, target those drones. But the point defense cannons couldn't track targets moving so erratically. The drones seemed to predict every move the Caldrith ships made, adjusting their attack patterns in real time. They worked together like a single organism, communicating and coordinating with perfect efficiency. 4 minutes after the attack began, all 3 Caldrith warships floated dead in space. Their weapons were destroyed or disabled. Their shields were down. Their engines produced only minimal power. The crews were completely unharmed, but the ships were nothing more than floating metal containers. The drones regrouped and returned to the Defender, disappearing back into the hull as smoothly as they had emerged. Captain Hartley reappeared on the main screen. Behind him, Commander Thalen could now see other humans working at various stations. A woman with red hair tied back stood near Hartley, presumably Commander Whitfield. "General Varick," James said calmly, "your crews are safe. We've disabled your ships but caused no casualties. Your life support systems are fully functional. Admiral Hayes, I assume you'll send rescue vessels." Victoria nodded, still staring in shock at the tactical displays. "Of course. Immediately." "Good," James continued. "Now, let me explain something that your species apparently doesn't understand. Those drones were controlled by artificial intelligence systems. Human-designed AI that can think, adapt, and learn faster than any biological mind. Every drone was analyzing your tactics, predicting your movements, and adjusting its strategy thousands of times per second." He paused, letting that information sink in. "We developed this technology because we spent thousands of years fighting ourselves," James said. "Every war, every battle, every conflict taught us something new. We learned to think tactically, to anticipate our enemies, to adapt to any situation. When you've been fighting your own species for that long, you get very, very good at it." Commander Emma Whitfield stepped forward beside James. She had sharp green eyes and a serious expression. "This is what the elder races feared, Admiral Hayes. Not that we're naturally violent or evil. They feared our ability to learn, to adapt, to take any challenge and turn it into an advantage. We don't have the strongest weapons or the best shields. But we have something more valuable: 10,000 years of experience in warfare, strategy, and survival." James nodded. "So here's the situation. We just disabled 3 warships in under 5 minutes without killing anyone. Imagine what we could do if we actually wanted to cause harm. Now, does Earth get a seat at the negotiating table, or do we need to provide another demonstration?" Admiral Victoria Hayes stood in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council 3 days later. The massive room was circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from 47 different species filled those seats, their forms ranging from the insectoid Caldrith to the aquatic nereids who floated in specialized water tanks. The chamber hummed with worried conversations in dozens of languages. This was an emergency session, called with unprecedented speed. Nothing like this had happened in over 1,000 years. Victoria walked to the central platform, her old body moving slowly but with dignity. Behind her, on a raised section reserved for guests and petitioners, stood Captain James Hartley and Commander Emma Whitfield. They wore their dark military uniforms, standing at attention, their faces calm and professional. "Members of the Council," Victoria began, her voice amplified throughout the chamber, "we face a situation that was supposed to be impossible. The quarantine of Earth has failed. Humans have achieved space travel, and they demand recognition as a sovereign species with full rights in the galactic community." Angry voices erupted from multiple representatives. A tall, crystalline being named Ambassador Thorne stood up, his body refracting light into rainbow patterns. "This is outrageous," Thorne declared. "The quarantine was put in place by the elder races themselves. It was meant to protect the galaxy from a dangerous, violent species. We cannot simply ignore thousands of years of established policy because they built a few ships." "A few ships," Victoria replied. "Ambassador, 3 days ago, a single human vessel disabled 3 Caldrith warships in 4 minutes without causing a single casualty. Their technology rivals our own, and they developed it completely independently in just a few years. Then they are even more dangerous than the elder races believed," another representative called out. This was Councillor Breen, a mammalian species known for their cautious nature. "We should reinforce the quarantine, add more defenses, contain them before." "Before what?" James Hartley's voice cut through the chamber. He had stepped forward without permission, breaking protocol. Guards moved toward him, but Victoria raised a hand, stopping them. "Captain Hartley," she said, "you have not been granted permission to speak." "And I don't need your permission, Admiral," James replied firmly. "Earth is not a member of this council. Your rules don't apply to us. That's exactly the problem we're here to solve." The chamber fell silent. The audacity of the human shocked everyone present. James walked down to stand beside Victoria on the central platform. "You're talking about us like we're not here. Like we're animals that need to be caged. But let me tell you what I see in this chamber. I see 47 species who claim to value peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. Yet you kept an entire planet imprisoned for 10,000 years. You decided our fate without ever talking to us, without ever giving us a choice. You were primitive, Ambassador Thorne argued. You were killing each other with primitive weapons. The elder races were protecting you from yourselves and protecting us from your violence. You're right, James said, and the admission surprised many in the chamber. We were violent. We are violent. But we're also capable of cooperation, of compassion, of building something greater than ourselves. Yes, we fought wars. But we also created art, music, literature, and philosophy. We built hospitals to heal our sick and schools to educate our children. We're not simple creatures, Ambassador. We're complex, just like every species in this room. Commander Emma Whitfield joined James on the platform. The footage of our drone demonstration has spread across your entire communication network, she said. We've monitored your news channels. Dozens of species are now questioning the Caldrith fleet's authority. Some are asking why the Council kept Earth's existence secret. Others are wondering what else you've hidden from them. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with various representatives. You're afraid of us. We understand that. But fear isn't a good reason to deny an intelligent species their basic rights. And more importantly, it won't work. We're here now. We're not going away. You can either accept us as equals and partners, or you can try to fight us. But I promise you, we've spent our entire history preparing for conflict. It's what we do best. Victoria stepped forward again. The Council must vote. Will Earth be recognized as a sovereign entity with full membership rights, or will we attempt to reinforce the quarantine and risk open conflict? The debate lasted for hours. Representatives argued passionately on both sides. Some saw humans as a threat that needed to be contained. Others recognized that the galaxy had changed and they needed to adapt. Finally, the vote was called. The holographic display showed the results. 31 votes in favor of recognizing Earth, 14 against, and 2 abstentions. James and Emma remained expressionless, but something subtle shifted in their posture. A slight relaxation of shoulders. A quiet breath of relief. Earth is hereby recognized as a sovereign entity, Victoria announced formally. Captain Hartley, Commander Whitfield, you are invited to establish an embassy and begin formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. After the session ended, Victoria found James standing alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars through a massive transparent wall. That was quite a gamble you took, she said quietly, standing beside him. What if the vote had gone the other way? James was silent for a moment. Then we would have gone home, prepared our defenses, and waited. Humans are patient when we need to be, Admiral. We've waited 10,000 years. We could have waited longer. The old records were correct to fear your species, Victoria admitted. Not because you're monsters, but because you never stop adapting. You never accept that anything is impossible. That mindset, that refusal to quit, it will change the entire galaxy. James smiled slightly, still looking at the stars. That's what being human means, Admiral. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest or the fastest. But we're the ones who refuse to give up. We're the ones who look at a challenge and see an opportunity. You kept us locked away for 10,000 years, and we used that time to prepare ourselves for this moment. He turned to face her. Earth doesn't want to dominate the galaxy. We don't want to conquer or destroy. We just want our place among the stars. We want to explore, to learn, to grow. And yes, if someone threatens us, we'll defend ourselves with everything we have. But we'd much rather be friends than enemies. Victoria nodded slowly. Then welcome to the galactic community, Captain. I hope we can build something worthwhile together. So do we, Admiral, James replied. So do we. Far above them, the UNSC Defender floated alongside hundreds of other ships from dozens of different worlds. Earth's isolation had ended. Humanity had finally taken its place among the stars, and nothing would ever be the same again.